Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking to you here in my bedroom in the great state of Kansas. And we are also talking about Kansas, not the state, but the band in my part two of this deep dive on the band. I did part one a long time ago. I started doing this, covered the first five albums and how they started and all that. And then I got involved with other things like the Oscar ceremony was coming around. And then I redid my top 100 favorite albums. It took a lot of time to do that. And so I do want to get back to Kansas and finishing out this deep dive. This part two, so it will be a part three, and then I'll do a top 10 Kansas songs at the end of that as well and rank the albums and all that. Anyways, so let's get to part two. Part one, we basically ended with their most popular albums that they ever made back to back, and we're getting the late 70s period for them. If you don't know, the two like really popular albums came out was Left Overture and Point of No Return had their big hit songs, of course, Carry On My Wayward Son, and then Dust in the Wind, the two big ones. But so they're at this period when they're coming up to their next album, the sixth album. They're at basically the peak of their popularity at this time period, and they're mostly a big prog rock band, except for a couple of those commercial hits. They didn't have a lot of commercial hits under their belt, but they're becoming very popular as a live band and all this, and very popular amongst prog rock fans. And so that carried on into the sixth album, which is called Monolith. Monolith, which comes out in 1979. It's their sixth studio album, and it is charts at number 10 in the U.S., which marks their third top 10 chart in a row, and is the last time they'll ever chart in the top 10. So this, again, as far as albums go, this is their three best charting albums right in a row in this late 70s period. Monolith, though, doesn't really hold any like big hits like the other two did. It still kind of carries on the prog rock sound. There's like 8 songs. There's a lot of songs that are very long and very instrumentally, the kind of stuff I'm not as into. Again, I'm not really into the prog rock of this period, not into a lot of their early albums, and this I think was even worse than the last 3 or so. Like even Mask and then Left Overture, those two I thought were okay as far as prog rock albums go, though I don't give them like huge like credit or huge recommendation. Obviously, they have Left Overture is like their biggest album of all time, big selling album. Monolith, again, is just I was pretty bored with the album overall, and I think probably most of its reason why it's a top 10 hit album is because of the huge hits they had in the last two albums. Like I said, they don't have a big hit on this album. In fact, there's only 2 songs I really enjoyed on there, Away From You, and then Reason to Be the Closer is a really good song. That's like probably going to be my top 10, top 5 favorite Kansas songs I say right now. Maybe even my favorite Kansas song. It is a great kind of more ballad type song. Great acoustic guitar playing in there. Great melody. It's a very beautiful song. Good lyrics in there. Or good vocals. Yeah, that one really surprised me because I was really kind of bored with the album. And then you get to the closer, Reason to Be, and it's like, wow, I don't know why this wasn't. I don't know that this was a huge hit song. I don't see anything that says otherwise. I'm sorry. I know there's kind of a glare from the. I don't know how to stop it from the light behind me. But yeah, Reason to Be, one of the best songs they ever did. Crazy, it's not like a huge hit for them as far as I know. But besides that, there's only 2 songs I really cared about that much on Monolith. Anyway, so that was their 6th album. And a lot of things are changing at this point, actually, in the band. And we're going to see a lot of changes within the band and kind of their musical direction starting to change too at this point once we get into the early 80s. In fact, the band is going to start drifting apart, as we're going to see. And a big part of that is because of Livgren. He has a conversion to Christianity and becomes a born-again Christian. And this kind of definitely reflects in the lyrics that he's writing at this point, where he's writing more songs and lyrics that have more of a Christian overtone to it. Though they're not like a Christian band by any means, but definitely that's definitely more of a direction that he is going himself, which is interesting when you think of Walsh, the other big songwriter and singer in the band. Like I said earlier in part one, his songs, he really was into Eastern religions, and a lot of songs that he was writing reflected his what his like in the Eastern religious stuff. And so you're going to have a bit of a contrast of, the confliction there between the two, Livgren and Walsh. One really, into the Christian religion, one in the Eastern religions. So as the band kind of started going more towards that, I guess, more Christian themes, and actually was starting to get more of a Christian crowd. Like, more Christians were starting to listen to Kansas at this point, and some of their songs were even making it onto Christian radio, I think, at this point. As you can tell, a lot of members that aren't Christians are not liking this new. They want to be known as like the Christian band, of course, because if you're not a Christian, they won't be necessarily associated with that. So this definitely is kind of a lot of members are going to start leaving here, including Walsh, because of this new kind of direction. They also are going to, at this part, they're kind of going a little bit away from the prog rock that they were doing so much before, and they're getting a little more poppier, I think. And their albums are getting a little more pop rock kind of combination in their album songs, which I actually love. Like, I'm not into the prog rock stuff, but I actually really enjoy this period of time in the 80s when they're, even though it's not like their most prolific or most popular period as far as album, charting and all that, and hit songs, I'm more big on more popular rock type stuff. Anyway, so it's like, I'm sure for most diehard Kansas fans, this may be a period where they feel like the band maybe is, selling out, getting more commercial and all that, and this is like maybe where they start going downhill. As a band, I'm the opposite. I'm like, this is when they actually get kind of good, where I'm like, okay, I'm not really liking the early stuff, but now we're getting to the 80s stuff, I'm kind of enjoying them more, which is kind of probably different than most people and what was going on. So also another member, I think, is their bass player, Hope. He also converts to Christianity as well. And so you have two Christians in the group. He's coming up to their 7th album, and you're going to see some of that come through here. So their 7th album is called Audio Visions, and it's released September of 1980. And it charts at number 26 in the US, so it's still not bad. Still charts fairly well. They're still a very popular band, of course. And they also had a top 40 hit with the song called Hold On. And the album was the last one to be certified gold. Hold On is actually a pretty good song, and I've never heard it before. I didn't know it says a top 40 hit, but I don't remember hearing it on the radio myself. But it is a really good song, and I really like it, especially for the lyrics of it, which Livgren wrote because he converted to Christianity, and he wanted his wife to also convert to Christianity. And so the song is a personal song of his, written basically to his wife, trying to convince her to also convert to Christianity. So to me, I think it's actually a really nice, sweet song. So that was really cool. That was top 40 hit and has these Christian themes to it, as some of the songs on the album that he writes anyways do. Overall, I actually really liked Audio Visions. It's actually my favorite album up to this point. It has a lot of good songs on it. Like I said, it's more popular rock type stuff and not prog rock. And like Monolith, I give 6 out of 10. Audio Visions, I give an 8 out of 10. I think it's a solid album. And it's the first time I'm really enjoying Kansas as a band for me. A lot of good stuff here. Like I said, Hold On was really good. Relentless, Anything for You, Don't Open Your Eyes were some of my highlights on the album. Overall, I would say definitely, for me, give Audio Visions a listen. Of course, like I said, unless you're really into prog rock stuff, then you might like the earlier stuff. But if you're like me, you're not into prog rock, definitely, I understand, because I wasn't into them, but definitely catch some of these albums that aren't as big. Like Audio Visions, I think, is actually an excellent album. And again, I haven't heard all their albums yet. I've heard that I'm going over kind of their 6 to 10 albums and kind of what's going on there. So I'll be interested once I get to the last 6 albums, see what direction they go on those. And so that's Audio Visions there. And like I said, due to the different direction of the more Christian themed lyrics in the album, Walsh leaves the group in October of 1981. So one of the kind of core members of the group, like I said, songwriting and singing and all that. And from the very beginning, going through 7 albums, a big member leaving in 1981 because of the the lyrical direction that the band was going. At this point, he ends up finding a new band called Streets as the name of the new band that he kind of starts himself, which doesn't ever go anywhere, have any big hits that I know of. But, you know, because creative differences, that's where it went. So they were looking for a replacement for Walsh. They needed somebody to take over his position. Anyway, so they even, I remember I didn't write down, but they auditioned a lot of people. And a lot of, I think even Sammy Hagar was one of the people they auditioned for the band but didn't get in. Ended up going to a guy named John Elefante, I think is his name, Elefante. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. So they got this guy to join the group to help with the songwriting and singing and playing guitar. Turns out that John Elefante is also a Christian. And this wasn't something that Livgren didn't hire him because he was a Christian or anything like that. He thought he was legitimately, you know, a good replacement for Walsh. So it just happened to be that he was also a Christian. So now you got two of your big songwriters, singers are Christians and like to write Christian themed type music. So it's very interesting, this new direction, which for me, I like. I don't know how other people feel about that new direction. Again, this is kind of gets into a direction where it maybe not as popular as the earlier stuff. Like I said, left Overture and stuff like that. But anyways, for me, it's going in a good direction. So they come out with their 8th studio album called Vinyl Confessions. This was released in May of 1982. And it charts number 6 in the US, actually even better than the last album. So not too bad. It had top 20 single and Play the Game Tonight, which is, again, not a song I remember too much about. I mean, as far as like, I don't remember hearing on the radio growing up. So it says a top 20 hit though. But I do like the song. It is one of my favorite songs on the album. So I kind of get that. And Vinyl Confessions actually thought was an okay album. I didn't like it as much as Audio Visions, but still liked it probably more than their prog rock stuff. Again, getting more into that pop rock stuff. And definitely more heavier on the Christian themes to a point where this is very popular amongst the Christian crowd, and they're kind of getting this whole new fan base, this Christian fan base that's coming in, and that's playing very well for them as well. So not just in the mainstream, but also in that kind of crowd. Another interesting thing to point on Vinyl Confessions is that Roger Taylor actually contributes a lot of background vocals on the songs. I think Queen maybe was playing around that area. I don't know. Roger Taylor happened to be in the studio, I think, at the same time. And so they asked him to, I guess, sing some background vocals, and he did, which is just a cool tidbit. Roger Taylor being the drummer for Queen. And I know my friend Briar, if he's watching this, he probably knows more about this than I do because he knows everything about Queen. So I don't know if he knows about Roger Taylor singing on these Kansas album. But Steinhardt, who I believe was the violin player, leaves the band after they tour this album. Again, all these different creative changes are causing some of the members to leave, including this one. So lose Walsh after the 7th album. Now we're losing Steinhardt after the 8th album. Like I said, I give it a 7 out of 10. It's an okay album. Like I said, Play the Game Tonight is really good. Right Away and Borderline were the 3 songs I enjoyed the most off this album. And again, not charting bad, number 16, so they're still not doing too bad. So now they're losing a couple members. They've gained some members. And now we're getting to the 9th studio album, which is called Drastic Measures and is released in July of 1983. Also released in July 1983 is me. July 1st is my birthday, so I was just being born when this album came out. It charted number 41 in the US, so still not as good as the last 2, obviously not as good as the 3 before that were top 10s. Still number 41, still charting. And this one's different or interesting comparatively to the other ones in that really John Elefante, as I'm calling him because I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I apologize for that. Most of the album is written by him, even more than Livgren, who was kind of the main songwriter before. And John Elefante is the new member. He actually writes almost all the songs on this album. So definitely, this album, you're going to see kind of shift even more towards his, which he's definitely more. He was like the other ones really started out prog rock. He's definitely not prog rock. He's definitely more poppier type of songwriter and singer. So we're seeing a very poppier sound in this album, I think, because of that. Anyway, so because of the change of, again, more towards a mainstream pop rock sound, even Livgren didn't like it, and Livgren was a big member of writing these last two albums that I thought going more to pop rock sound, but this even was too mainstream for Livgren, and he did not like the direction, which I don't understand why John Elefante, who's the new member, wrote most of the songs. I don't know. Livgren, you would think, would be the leader of the group. He was like, the kind of the main, core member that's, around, that he would have more creative direction on who's writing songs and stuff, and he would write more. But I don't know if it's just that he wasn't into writing at that time, or he didn't have enough, and John Elefante had a bunch of songs written, and so that's what they went with, or how, I don't know, somehow he kind of took over. It felt like the band in some sense, Livgren's one of the original members. In fact, Livgren writes a interesting song on the album called Mainstream. And the whole song is basically him kind of being critical of the fact that they've gone more mainstream, which is going away from the prog rock style and getting more commercial sounding. And so it's kind of it's almost meta. It's like, it's actually a very catchy song. I really like Mainstream. It's one of my favorite songs on the album, yet he's criticizing the fact that they're getting more mainstream. So it's kind of funny and ironic the way that song goes anyways. Also, actually, the album didn't have as much Christian messaging as the last two. It actually had more, even though John Elefante is a Christian as well, and a lot of his lyrics, I would think, would go that direction. Didn't have as much as the last two, so even Christians were somewhat disappointed with this album. So I think this album's kind of considered, like, by most probably, or if you're a big Kansas fan, you have to tell me. I feel like they mostly maybe didn't like this direction of the band. And then even the Christian fan base that was really getting on the band didn't like this album as much either, because they didn't feel like it had much. Again, they're not a Christian band though, so I don't know why Christians would be disappointed. It's like that's not their main key demo, or whatever. So it's somewhat of a disappointing album, I think, in some senses for others. But I'm here to say it's a really good album. It's actually my favorite album so far that I've heard. Of the first 10 albums that I've listened to, this is, to me, I don't want to say by far, but quite a bit the best one. And again, that's because I love the more pop rock commercial sounding than the prog rock I'm not into at all. And so this is definitely more my taste of music. So that's just a case of what kind of music do you like? And this is more of what I like. And I think they did a really good job with it. In fact, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. To the first album so far, I've given it a 9 to. And Audio Vision's the first album I gave an 8 to. So everything else has been just 7s is about the best they can do, to some of them are 5s, really, really terrible albums. But to me, this has been their best period, this 80s period with the change in direction for me. A lot of great songs. I wrote a bunch of songs that I really enjoyed off this album. Fight Fire with Fire, Everybody's My Friend, Mainstream, as I said. Looks like Amdy, I can't read my writing. Going Through the Motions, and Incident on a Bridge. So there's a lot of songs I was like, I'm really enjoying this new sound, and I would rather them go with this direction personally, even though it hasn't been their most popular direction anyway. So great album, even though it's not one of their best chart albums. I highly recommend it to anybody. If you haven't heard this album and you don't know much about Kansas, definitely check out Drastic Measures. I think it's actually a really good album. All right, so going on, the band disbands after this album, the 9th album, Drastic Measures again. Livgren's not happy with the direction. Even Hope, another Christian in the band, I think is the bass player, was not happy with the direction of the band. So both Livgren and Hope leave the group, and they find a band called AD. So they, again, like Walsh, go off and form their own band because they don't like the way the band's going, which is weird to me because they were kind of the main members. They could kick out John Elefante, I would think, if they didn't like what he was doing or try to force him out. I don't know. But the band basically breaks up at this point because of this, interesting enough. And Elefante would go on to be a successful producer for Christian bands like Petra, which is one of the big Christian rock bands. So it's funny that he would go on definitely more in a Christian, direction, and like I said, produce all of these bands. So he's mostly known as a Christian producer, interesting enough, after this point. He was also a popular singer, Christian singer, and he never came and played with Kansas again. So John Elefante comes in after Wash leaves, after I think it was Audio Visions, whatever. It's a big part of 2 of their albums, which one I didn't think was that great, but the other one I think was really great. So interesting where they could have gone if they would have kept him. But yeah, he's part of 2 albums, but then he never joins them again, even in reunion concerts, I guess, and whatever. Even though again, he wasn't around that long, but still made a big impact for me on the band. So interesting that he kind of just goes away, never seen again at this point. So the band is over after 1983, when they put out this 9th album, Drastic Measures. So the band's gone. Other band members go on to start their own band. So you think Kansas is done? No, Kansas is not done. Like I said, they have like 7 more albums coming out. So they kind of do regroup. And they form in July of 1985. So I'm about 2 years old at this point. With Ehart, Williams, and Walsh. And they add bassist Billy Greer and guitarist Steve Morse. So Walsh, obviously, nothing happens with his band Streets. So after Kansas kind of breaks up in total, and I guess he's like, hey, let's go and try to do this again, reform the group Kansas, and and try it again, I guess, in a sense, with a whole new kind of lineup here. So they come out with their 10th studio album, Power, in October of 1986. And this is the first album with MCA Records. This charts number 35 in the US, so just a little bit better than the last one, which was 41, but not as good as the other 4 or 5 before that. And this album is written by Walsh and Morse, are the two. The guitarist Steve Morse, and Walsh, I believe, played like keyboard and or he might have played guitar. No, he played guitar. That's right. Yeah, I think he played guitar maybe, and of course was a big songwriter and lead singer for the band. So this is album wrote by those two, and they did have a single called All I Wanted, which reached number 19 in the charts. And that song I wasn't too familiar with, and I don't know, I really didn't like this album. I thought it didn't have a lot of songs that I really enjoyed. Even the hit song on it really didn't do much for me. I give the album a 6 out of 10, so really a downfall from going from Audio Visions, which I gave an 8 out of 10, to Vinyl Confessions, which I gave 7 out of 10, and then to me the peak so far, Drastic Measures, which was 9 out of 10, and then this falls all the way down back to 6 out of 10, back to their prog rock kind of period where I wasn't into as much. Yeah, so definitely for me a downfall, even though it wasn't such a downfall it's not going to be their peak period, but still not a huge downfall from their charting compared to what they were doing at that time period. But yeah, so I'm a little disappointed, a little surprised after going in such a high as Drastic Measures, having such a low as this Power album anyway. So that's where I am with that and what's going on there. So I'll leave it there in part 2. In part 3, we will come back and talk more about this new reformed Kansas band and the direction they're going in their albums. I'll give a good listen to, so I can talk more about these albums of theirs, and finish out this deep dive in Kansas, and give it top 10 like songs, rank all the albums and all that. And anyway, it's been a very interesting journey so far with a band I didn't know that much about, which is named after my favorite state, the state of Kansas. Anyway, so thank you so much for watching this. Definitely comment if you know anything about Kansas that you can contribute. I would like to know anything else about them that maybe I missed. But anyways, thanks so much for liking this video, and thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a good day.